sing now, let's get away now. Away with words, words like we say each and every day. Away with words, what's in a name? What do you say? In so many words at the end of the day. I talk, you talk, they talk, we all talk. Away with words, away with words, away.
Have a care! Give fire!
How now, gentlefolk? Forsooth, in a trice I shall flee this field of battle and boldly go to the barber's. Then, slippery as an eel, I shall snoop inside the home of the almighty Nose himself. Unless, of course, I'm sent to Coventry.
Many of the phrases we use today, like flash in the pan or keep your powder dry, come from the Civil War. And I'll be back to join the fray. But my journey starts in Ely.
Away with Words is all about the English language, and today I'm going to be looking at some of the hidden history in words. It's hard to tell, because we've only had the written language for 6,000 years, but anthropologists reckon that mankind has been talking for 82,000 years, which is amazing, because you'd have thought by now we'd have learned to understand each other. So let's see if a little linguistic archaeology can shed some light. But first, I've got something rather personal to sort out. Hello, I believe you're expecting me.
Mr. Innes,
That's right.
pop the gown on and walk this way, please.
Thank you. It seems I've got to improve my image. They want me more media-friendly. Media-friendly? What's that supposed to mean? I asked. Something more show-busy, they said. Well, goodness knows what they can do. What you see is what you get. I've only got one face and I'm stuck with it. The saying goes, handsome is as handsome does, because back in the 14th century, the word handsome was rooted in the idea of giving. A handsome person was somebody willing to give, happy to lend a hand. We still use the word in this way when we talk about a handsome gift. But handsome, meaning physically attractive, is a recent use of the word. On the other hand, ugly has a far more ancient origin. It comes from the Old Norse language brought over by the Vikings. It stems from the word ugga, meaning to dread. So an ugly person could be someone you dreaded meeting. Ooh.
Now, you could say I was as bald as a coot, but a coot is a bird with a white mark, or bow, on its forehead. Being bowed means having a white mark, like a bald-faced stag, which is just another way of saying a deer with a white mark on his head.
Which I think looks much more like me than a coot. Mind you, if I was to go out in the sun without a hat on and this lot turned red, would I look like a moorhen? Anyway, we definitely get the word bald from having a white patch. Thanks, Mitchell.
Thank you.
Well, after all that, I still look like Clive James. But he's media-friendly, isn't he? Never mind, let's see what I look like with hair. Good grief. Incidentally, wig is short for periwig, a 17th century word that comes from the Italian perucca and the French perruque, meaning head of hair. A periwig was a lavish and extravagant creation, powdered and favoured by French courtiers. But surely they don't expect me to wear something as old-fashioned as that. Let's try this one. Yeah! Now let's do Chris Evans. Nope, this isn't going to work. You'll just have to take me as I am, warts and all. Here I am in Ely, Cambridgeshire, home of Oliver Cromwell, Lord Protector of England. Cromwell was made governor of the Isle of Ely in 1643, the year after the Civil War began. He was known locally as Lord of the Fens, one of many titles he was to gain, some of them a lot less dignified. And here is the great man himself. And this is the house where he lived, with his good lady wife, Mrs. Cromwell. Let's take a look inside. As you can see, he's not exactly handsome, but he did write to his portrait painter saying, "Do not flatter me at all, but remark all the roughness, pimples, warts, and everything you see." Not quite as snappy as Pink Me Warts and All, but enough to worry his artist, who feared he'd never get another job, because it was unthinkable in those days not to show your subject in the best possible light. A bit like Hello magazine, I suppose. Poor old Cromwell was said to have a nose like a carbuncle. Carbuncle, what a lovely word. It's 13th century and literally means inflamed swelling. It's from the Latin carbunculus, meaning little red coal. Cromwell had to put up with an awful lot of ridicule over his nose. They called him the almighty nose, his nose ship, copper nose, ruby nose, nosy. You get the idea.
People can be so cruel. But enough of Mega Conk. What of Mrs. Cromwell? She was also quite well known.
As a cook. In fact, you might even make it as a celebrity cook, because someone's actually put out a book of her recipes. They certainly liked their food in the 17th century, and this is quite a feast. Fruit, vegetables and meat. Have you ever wondered why we call meat by a different name simply because it's on a plate? For example, sheep becomes mutton, and cow becomes beef, and pig becomes pork. Well, it's very simple, because sheep, cow and pig are all Anglo-Saxon words, but when the Normans conquered England, they brought with them their French names for animals. And so we get beef from the French bœuf, mutton from mouton, and pork from pork. With a C, that's how the French spell it, pork. It's fake. Had me fooled all the time. Pies were also very popular, but obviously not fake ones. We've all heard of eating humble pie, but where does that come from? Well, the word humble, or humbles, was another word for intestines or unspeakable bits that the nobility simply wouldn't eat. But the poor people were very glad to receive the leftovers and make them into humble pie. Well, I'm glad we're indoors for the moment, but sooner or later we've got to brace ourselves and go out into all that. I don't mean it, really.
Don't worry, I've got plenty. All right. It's all right. 6 and 4 is 10. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Well, here we are in Ely Marketplace. Over hundreds of years, money has changed hands, but not so much today because it's pouring with rain and everyone's packing up and going home. But did you know that as early as the 17th century, rhino was slang for money? It comes from the Greek word rhinos, meaning nose, and it may have something to do with the saying to pay through the nose. In the 9th century, the Danes imposed a nose tax on the Irish. It was so called because anyone refusing to pay had their noses slit.
Lovely, thanks very much. Thank you. Don't forget your banana, sweetheart.
And while we seem to be on the subject of noses, the original nosy Parker was one Matthew Parker, a 16th century Archbishop of Canterbury, who snooped into the private lives of his clergy. He wasn't very popular. And then there was the Iron Duke, the Duke of Wellington. He was called Old Nosy, because of his huge conch, by his troops. Now all of these are nicknames, but where does nickname come from? I'll tell you in a moment, but let's ask some people if they have some nicknames. What's your name?
Hello, my name's Lindsay.
Lindsay, did you ever have a nickname at school or anything?
I've got one now.
You got one now?
Tubbs.
Tubbs? Oh! Well, I was going to ask you why.
Well, see.
Well, I don't. Is that? Well, I think it looks jolly nice to me. Thanks very much, Lindsay. Did you ever have a nickname at school?
Yes, I was called Dripping
Dripping? Why?
because I took bread and dripping sandwiches to school.
Well, did it taste nice?
Yes, but actually we had it because we weren't really rich enough to afford anything else.
Oh well, I mean, but it was sustenance.
It was tasty,
wasn't it?
yes,
Yeah,
it was
yeah. I think
tasty,
I had
yes.
bread dripping
Yes.
during the war.
Yeah, well, this was during the war, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You young folks don't know half of it.
No.
Did you ever have a nickname? And if so, what was it?
Oh, Lofty.
Lofty. Ah, I wonder why. Did you ever have a nickname?
Mine?
Yeah.
No, not really.
What's your real name then?
Jackie.
Jackie? Are you sure you never had a nickname before? You did have a nickname. Everybody has nicknames at school. You're ruining the programme. Well, I think quite sensibly everybody else has cleared off, so why don't we? Let's go somewhere out of the wind and the rain on this gorgeous June day, and I'll tell you where nickname comes from. Sorry about this. It's all I can find. Anyway, where do we get nickname from? Well, it's all a mistake. It started out as eek name. Eek was another word for also, so it was an also name. But because we say an eek name, it soon became a neek name, and then just nickname. I hope this clears up soon. Ha! Well, turned out nice again. That's the miracle of television for you. This is Ely Cathedral, a truly magnificent piece of Norman architecture that dominates the skyline for miles around, and it's well worth a visit if you're in the area. The word cathedral comes from the Greek cathedra, meaning chair or throne. In the early days of Christianity, any church that had a bishop became known as a cathedral. Because every bishop had a throne. And this is my throne. But have you ever noticed how the English language is full of words that sound the same but have completely different meanings? For example, this cannon gets its name from the Latin canna, meaning reed, because it resembles a long, hollow stem. And I suppose it does work on the same principle as a pea shooter. However, the kind of cannon you find inside the cathedral gets its name from the Greek, meaning to rule. There are no prizes for guessing why Ely is called Ely. It simply means eel district. Eels are well-known slippery customers, and you have to get up early in the morning if you want to catch them. So join me after the break to find out how it's done.
Welcome back to A Way with Words. I'm off up the River Ouse with eel catcher Sid Merry. He knows a thing or two about eels. Ooze is the Celtic word for water, but nobody knows where the word eel comes from. Not even Sid.
Well, it's 7 o'clock in the morning and there's a little bit of a nip in the air and we're off to catch some eels. The interesting thing about the word baby eel, which is an elver, is that it gets the name from the Latin for horsehair. Elver is horsehair in Latin. I suppose because baby eels look very small, thin and black and like horsehair. But I wouldn't like them stuffed into my mattress. Did you know why there are so many river avons in England? Avon is the old Celtic word for river. So when the Romans came and said to the locals, "What is this river called?" they said Avon. So the Romans duly wrote it down. Little knowing that they were just saying it was called river. What's a good catch?
Well, it varies, you know.
What's a bad
It's
one?
a reasonable one. Bad ones when you don't get any at all out of 40 nets.
I suppose it's seasonal, actually. They come in the summer, don't they?
Yeah, they normally start now as soon as the water warms
Oh, there's a
up.
few in here, Sid.
Yeah.
Are they all that kind of greeny colour? Do you ever get darker ones?
No, you get silver ones in the September time, when the ones what make the way back to the Saragossa Sea.
God, they're muscly little things, aren't they? Well, we've got the eels, so let's take them back and put them in a pie. And this hotel in Ely is famous for its eel pie. This is Steve, the chef at the Lamb Hotel. Steve, what exactly are you doing now?
Well, basically what I'm doing now, I'm taking the eels that Sid's brought up this morning, that he's skinned now, I'm going to fillet them and then get them ready for our pie that we're going to be serving later on this evening.
People have come from miles around to have them. They're lovely
That's
fresh
right.
eels.
I mean, every time that we've got them on the menu, you know, they always seem to sell far better than dishes that you would think would automatically sell, like salmon and stuff like that.
Yeah. What do you do with the bones?
The bones, we use the bones then to make the stock.
Right, well, I'm looking forward to it. Mrs. Cromwell's cookbook has a recipe for eel pie. First, flail some eels, add a handful of sweet herbs, parsley and onions, and make a good coffin of pastry. Pastry comes from the Latin word paste, meaning anything sticky. The French word pâté and the Italian pasta come from the same root.
Enjoy?
Thank you. Well, I must confess I've never tasted eel pie before, but it certainly smells good.
Everything right for you, sir?
Steve, it's wonderful.
Good.
I'm surprised, actually, because you just don't expect wriggly eels to be so delicious. But they really, really taste
You
wonderful.
see, the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
That's a good expression, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely delicious. Thanks
Glad
a
you
lot.
enjoyed it.
Thank you. Well, they say an army marches on its stomach. I wonder if I can after this lot, but we'll see.
An admonition!
Here in Colchester, the English Civil War Society are reenacting the battle between Cromwell's new model army and the Royalists. Believe it or not, all these people do this as a hobby. Royalists were known as Cavaliers because of their swashbuckling appearance. Cromwell's men were Roundheads, who cut their hair short to show contempt for the Royalists' curls. Cromwell not only had a lot of nose, he had a lot of nous.
Before making a river crossing in the Irish campaign, Oliver Cromwell urged his troops to keep their powder dry and trust in God. Nowadays, we just use it to mean hold back. But then they must have meant it literally. Obviously, gunpowder was a very precious commodity in a battle. Well, wouldn't you know, it's raining again. But I'm with Alan Slater, Lieutenant of Musket. Sir, what regiment are you with?
I'm of Colonel Edward Montague's regiment of foot, which is part of the Eastern Association.
And what exactly is a flash in the pan?
A flash in the pan is where the powder in the priming pan, which is on the musket under this cover here, just flashes and the main charge in the gun doesn't ignite. Musketeer McAteer here can demonstrate one to you if you wish.
Thank you very much.
You can see he's putting a small amount of fine powder in the pan, which detonates the main charge.
A flash in the pan. The infantry were a force of soldiers too inexperienced or low in rank to be cavalry. And yes, the word does come from infant.
Fellow, where are you going?
Me?
Ah, you.
I'm going over to look at the historical site.
You can't go just like that.
What do you mean?
You have to put a costume on.
Really?
Aye.
Oh, well, I'd better find a costume then. Sorry.
Get about it.
Well, here I am. What do you think? Actually, competition time. Name this painting. No, it's too easy. Shh, I'm hiding from Roundheads. I'm really getting into this. You could say right up to the hilt. Which, as far as we're concerned, means as far as you could go. But this is the sword, and this is the hilt. And if you were wounded up to the hilt, well, the sword would go all that way. I am undone. Mortally wounded, up to the hilt. I'm wounded, so they're taking me to the barber. Barber is a 13th century word, and it comes from the Latin barba, meaning beard. Barbers' jobs were mainly to shave beards, but military barbers were also surgeons, ready to cut off anything. Surgeon comes from two Greek words, ker meaning hand and ergon meaning work. So it literally meant handwork, because a surgeon heals manually rather than by medicine. Actually, I think I've made a miraculous recovery, old chap. It's only beetroot juice. By the way, blade comes from the German blätt, meaning leaf. A blade resembles a leaf in that it's thin and flat. And we do talk of blades of grass, but it's hard to compare this deadly-looking instrument with a delicate leaf. I suppose you're a Roundhead surgeon, then?
Indeed, I am.
Oh, dear. Now they're sending me to Coventry. Coventry was a Roundhead town where captured royalists were sent to prison. I'm going to have to talk fast. Lads, you're making a big mistake. I'm not a royalist. Look at my hair. You can see I'm a Roundhead. No, wait. You've got the wrong man. You can't do this to me. I'm a TV presenter.
Hey now, say now, let's get away now. Away with words. Words like we say each and every day. Away with words. What's in a name? What do you say? And so many words at the end of the day. I talk, you talk, they talk, we all talk.